The crisp February air in Portland crackled with tension, a tension that had been building for weeks. Outside the gleaming windows of the Tesla dealership, a crowd had gathered, their breath visible in the cold air. Their signs painted a clear picture of their anger, frustration, and determination. "Musk out of the White House!" one screamed in bold letters, capturing the sentiment of many. Another simply read, "Honk if you love education," a plea for support from passing cars. This was no ordinary product launch, no queue of eager consumers waiting for the latest tech marvel. This was a protest, a stand against what many saw as the unchecked power of Elon Musk, a man whose influence seemed to know no bounds. The crowd was a mix of concerned citizens, parents worried about their children's education, and activists fighting for a cause. The recent appointment of Elon Musk to a newly created Innovation Czar position in the White House had ignited a firestorm of controversy, dividing the nation. His plans to slash foreign aid and dismantle the Department of Education, all in the name of streamlining and disrupting the government. The anger was palpable, the stakes high. Musk, the billionaire CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, had become a polarizing figure, a symbol of both hope and fear. His supporters hailed him as a visionary genius, a man who could lead the country into a new era of innovation. His detractors saw him as a dangerous megalomaniac, wielding his wealth and influence to impose his will on the world, disregarding the consequences. Today in Portland, the lines were drawn, the city a microcosm of a nation divided, each side resolute in their beliefs. The Portland protest was not an isolated incident. It was a spark in a much larger fire that was spreading across the nation. It was part of a larger, coordinated effort dubbed Tesla Takedown, a movement that sought to challenge the growing influence of tech giants in our political landscape. This nationwide movement had been brewing for weeks, fueled by Musk's increasingly public role in politics. His actions and statements had ignited a firestorm of controversy and concern. At the heart of the movement were two figures: Joan Donovan, a disinformation researcher known for her work on media manipulation, and Alex Winter, the filmmaker and activist. Their combined expertise and passion were the driving force behind Tesla Takedown.
We had been tracking the rise of what we called techno-authoritarianism, the increasing influence of tech billionaires in government and policy making. It was a trend that we found deeply troubling and potentially dangerous for democracy. Musk's appointment was, in our view, a dangerous escalation of this trend. It represented a significant shift in the balance of power, one that we felt needed to be addressed urgently.
I brought my filmmaking skills and activist network to the table. I knew that through powerful visuals and compelling narratives, we could reach a wider audience and make a real impact. I understood the power of images and storytelling in galvanizing public opinion. By capturing the raw emotions and determination of the protesters, we could convey the urgency of our cause.
Together, Donovan and Winter had rallied a diverse coalition of activists, students, educators, and concerned citizens. This coalition was united by a common goal: to push back against the encroaching influence of tech billionaires in politics. Their message was clear: Elon Musk's foray into politics was a threat to democracy, and it needed to be stopped. They believed that by standing together, they could make their voices heard and bring about meaningful change. The Tesla Takedown protests swept across the nation like a wildfire. From Seattle to New York, Miami to Los Angeles, people took to the streets, their voices echoing a shared sense of outrage. In Austin, Texas, home to Tesla's Gigafactory, thousands marched peacefully through the streets, chanting slogans like "Whose streets? Our streets," and "No Musk in our government."
In Seattle, we saw similar scenes of peaceful protest, with families and students joining the demonstrations. The atmosphere was festive, with music and speeches highlighting the importance of education and civic engagement.
However, not all the protests were peaceful. In Portland, the situation escalated as a small group of masked individuals vandalized the Tesla dealership, smashing windows and spray painting anti-Musk slogans on the walls. Similar acts of vandalism were reported in Loveland, Colorado, where a Tesla charging station was damaged. These incidents, while isolated, cast a shadow over the otherwise peaceful protests, raising concerns about the movement's direction. The nationwide protests did not go unnoticed by Wall Street. Tesla's stock, which had been riding high on the wave of Musk's success, took a tumble. The company's share price dropped by 5% in the days following the protests. wiping out billions of dollars in market value. Investors, spooked by the negative publicity and the potential impact on Tesla's brand image, started to sell their shares.
Adding fuel to the fire were reports of growing unease among Tesla's own employees. Some expressed their discomfort with Musk's political activities, arguing that it was hurting the company's reputation. Others worried about the potential backlash from customers who disagreed with Musk's views.
The Tesla Takedown protests had exposed a rift, not just in American society, but within one of its most iconic companies. As the nation grappled with the fallout from the Tesla Takedown protests, community leaders and activists reiterated the importance of peaceful protest and nonviolence.
In a joint statement, Alex Winter and I condemned the acts of vandalism, emphasizing that they did not represent the spirit of the movement.
Our goal is to engage in a constructive dialogue, not to resort to destruction.
Their call for peace was echoed by numerous organizations and individuals across the country.
The message was clear. While anger and frustration were understandable, violence and destruction would only serve to undermine the movement's legitimacy and alienate potential allies.
Let's keep our focus on dialogue and change. Section 6. When protest crosses the line. The vandalism that marred some of the Tesla Takedown protests ignited a debate about the limits of free speech and the effectiveness of different forms of protest. While the vast majority of demonstrators remained peaceful, the actions of a few raised uncomfortable questions. Did smashing a window or spray painting a slogan cross the line from free speech into vandalism? When does righteous anger transform into something more destructive? The debate raged on social media and cable news, with opinions sharply divided. Some argued that any form of property damage was unacceptable regardless of the cause. Others countered that the vandalism paled in comparison to the injustices that had sparked the protests in the first place. The question remained, how could activists channel their anger into meaningful change without resorting to violence? Section 7. The power of the people versus the power of the boardroom. The Tesla Takedown protests highlighted a growing tension in American society. The clash between the power of the people and the power of the boardroom. Elon Musk, with his vast wealth and influence, had become a symbol of this tension. His appointment to a government position, coupled with his controversial policy proposals, had struck a nerve. The protests were a stark reminder that even billionaires are not above public scrutiny. They demonstrated the power of collective action to challenge those in positions of authority. The message was clear: when corporations and their CEOs wade into the political arena, they should be prepared for a public backlash. Section 8. Elon Musk, tech CEO or political puppet master. The Tesla Takedown protests also raised questions about the growing influence of tech billionaires in politics. Elon Musk's foray into government, while unprecedented in its scope, was just the latest example of this trend. From campaign donations to lobbying efforts, tech companies and their leaders have become increasingly adept at shaping public policy to suit their interests. This has led some to argue that Silicon Valley now wields more power than many elected officials. The protests were a sign that the public is waking up to this reality. They suggested a growing discomfort with the outsized influence of tech companies and a desire for greater accountability. The question remained, would these protests lead to meaningful reforms, or would the status quo prevail? Section 9. The future of democracy in the age of Tesla. The Tesla Takedown protests were a watershed moment in the ongoing debate about the future of democracy in the age of big tech. These protests were not just about a single company, but represented a broader concern about the growing influence of technology giants on our daily lives and political systems. They highlighted the need for greater transparency and accountability when it comes to the relationship between government and corporations. The public's demand for openness and honesty in how decisions are made has never been more urgent. They also underscored the importance of civic engagement and the willingness to hold those in power to account. Civic engagement is the backbone of any functioning democracy, and these protests reminded us of the power of collective action. The protests served as a potent reminder that a healthy democracy requires active participation from its citizens, not just during elections, but every day. It is through daily acts of engagement and vigilance that we can ensure our voices are heard and our rights protected. The road ahead will undoubtedly be challenging. The issues at hand are complex and multifaceted, requiring sustained effort and commitment from all sectors of society. The forces that fueled the Tesla Takedown protests, corporate influence, wealth inequality, and the erosion of trust in institutions, are complex and deeply entrenched. These are not problems that can be solved overnight, but the protests have sparked a necessary conversation. However, the protests offered a glimmer of hope. They demonstrated that when people come together, they can challenge the status quo and push for meaningful change. They showed that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, people still have the power to make their voices heard and demand a better future. The spirit of these protests is a testament to the enduring strength of democracy and the unyielding will of the people to fight for a just and equitable society.